this year, God willing. God willing. I am 59 years old. So, God willing, I'll be 60 this year. Born in Las Vegas. My mom and dad, mom from Bessemer, Alabama, dad from Mighty Oklahoma. Dad getting out of the Army. My mom had family from Alabama and moved to Vegas, and that's where they met. And I have a brother. His name is Drew. He drives trucks right now. So born in Vegas. Then late 60s, my folks moved to San Diego, California. We moved into an area called Logan Heights, southeast San Diego. And at the time, two-parent households, middle class to just below middle class. But the great thing about southeast San Diego back then, from about 69 to I'll say 86, 87, 88, is there were a lot of black businesses, a lot of entrepreneurship. We literally didn't have to leave the area to do anything, whether it be grocery stores, mechanics, a laundromat, restaurants, shoes, furniture, everything was right there. It's a combination community of Filipino, Samoan, Hispanic, because we're right there on the border, and African American, and many African Americans through the migration of leaving the South and the military. San Diego was big on the military with MCRD, Coronado, Air Force, I think I want to say Oceanside, where Camp Pendleton is. So grew up in San Diego, late 60s, early 70s. And the area I lived in, southeast San Diego, fantastic area. My aunt lived around the corner. Other aunt lived on the corner from us, then moved a little further out, kind of between what we call Skyline and East San Diego, southeast San Diego, right off of Logan Ave. And went to Bandini Elementary School, then Emerson, then junior college was right around the time, junior high was right around the time of busing, so a lot of us got bused out towards Claremont, Point Loma, the areas outside of Interstate 8, and I got a story about that down the line as well. So grew up right around the time of busing, so went to Marston, then I went to Claremont in the 10th grade, and then we moved to Spring Valley, which is kind of like in East San Diego, which is Spring Valley, Lemon Grove, and I ended up going to Mount McGill. So I'm gonna take a step back. So growing up in southeast San Diego, where we live, 38th and Logan, was probably about 2-3 miles from Lincoln High. And if most of y'all do not know, Terrell Davis, Marcus Allen, Damon Allen, Leland Maddox, Dave Grayson, a lot of great guys that I know went to Lincoln. We all played baseball, Little League together, Pop Warner football, Valencia Park, Pop Warner, Southeastern Little League, baseball. So a lot of us played baseball and football that grew up in that area. And other folks did other things that we didn't really know. All we knew was the dream, which the dream is part of the narrative and part of that piece of telling young African American men, this is what you should be. The dream is kind of thrown at us or kind of programmed to us to be athletes, entertainers, not knowing there's some other things outside of it. Though we kind of see it, but that's not what is, hypnotized or programmed to us. And so, like my friends and like a lot of us, most of us, the dream of playing pro ball was really programmed into us. However, with me, thankfully because of my mom, she was big on education. And literally I was a straight A student up until the 6th grade. And then once got bused to Marston, and just the different dynamics of being bused out to Marston and the teachers, and had a kind of a different relationship with one particular English teacher. My grades kind of suffered a bit. Didn't understand it, but it was just the social dynamics of race and racism and bigotry kind of played a role in that. But I bounced back. Still had some other teachers that were fantastic. Mr. Eichstead in shop, learned about electricity, how to be an electrician, metal shop, wood, along with what my dad had taught me and my brother about how to work on cars. So I have a great foundation in trades and knowing how to work and fix on things. I got a Datsun 280Z with the LS1 engine in that I did all the work on. So we'll talk about that a lot later as well. And so anyway, grew up in Southern California. Went to Marston, Claremont, then Mount McGill. Played baseball, played football. Matter of fact, a real great baseball player. Got hurt in the 10th grade playing football, and it kind of changed my perspective on sports. And right around the 10th grade, I started leaning heavy on what I needed to do academically and figure out what I wanted to do. I still kind of held on to baseball, but I also saw where when you play on a team, everybody doesn't give 100%. And I always observed that and witnessed that and understood that what you do in practice also reflects what happens when you play in the game, and as well as having good coaches. Because I was on a tournament team when I was about 15 that consisted of Leland Maddox, Kevin Mitchell, Anthony Long, Anthony Mitchell, Sam Horn, who went to the Boston Red Sox, Lou Barnes ended up playing for the Chicago Bears, who he ended up going to Oregon. My son went to Oregon. And that's another story as well. Just having the athletic connection around the United States with guys I grew up with. But we ended up playing a tournament baseball game in Huntington Beach, and we were supposed to stay at a house on the beach, but because they found out we were African American and Samoan and Hispanic, because we had the Gutierrez brothers as well as Jerry and Asala Pau. We didn't end up staying in the house. We stayed on some hotels right there near Huntington Beach, and so that's another story as well. At this age, I have stories and experiences, and I'm going to provide those to you. And so getting hurt was a blessing and a curse. And the game I got hurt in was Claremont against Orange Glen, and the quarterback for Orange Glen was Sean Salisbury, who ended up going to USC, and I think he ended up going to the Minnesota Vikings. But Sean Salisbury was a beast as a quarterback. At that time, I was playing linebacker and tight end, so I didn't come off the field. Yeah. Anyway, so got hurt, changed my perspective on sports. Still played baseball, still was pretty good, but my mind was somewhere else after I got hurt. I kind of knew I had to figure out some other things that I should be doing. So luckily, I always had good grades. Ended up going to junior college, still trying to figure out what I want to do. And two things happened. I remember Different World being on the TV. And back then, I think Ronald McNair, he was at Alcorn State. And I had got me a little county job working for the Department of Social Services. And at lunchtime, I would come to my apartment, and real close to my apartment, I would come home. I would watch Black College Football Today. And Black College Football Today, back then on ESPN2, would show all the HBCU football games and scores and who's playing and the players and just everything about the HBCUs football games and the highlights. And I was like, wow, there's more HBCUs other than Morehouse, Tuskegee, Howard, and Prairie View, because I had a friend who went to Prairie View. And I said, okay, there's more black colleges out. So at that time, I was at going to junior colleges, getting ready to get my AA and looking at what undergrad I was going to. The plan was probably just go to San Diego State, but then I just thinking about watching A Different World, knowing about Black College Football Today. I said, you know what? Let me think about going to an HBCU. Coincidentally, my best friend, who I've known since I was 8 years old, Marcus Coney, he married a young lady. Her name is Sharon, who was from Atlanta. The wedding was in Atlanta. So I was the best man. We flew out for the wedding. We took a tour of Atlanta, and this was 1989, 90. And I was just like, wow, this is different. We took a tour of the AU Center, and while taking a tour of the AU Center, went by Morehouse, and I picked up the application. Had the wedding. Marcus had the wedding. They're still married to this day. 2 sons. As a matter of fact, Marcus is a grandfather right now. Wow. And flew back home, and for a year, the application was up under my bed. And I moved back to my parents' house because I was getting ready to see what school I was going to go to, because me and Mark lived together in our apartment, then he got married. And at that time, Southern California was just out of hand with the drugs, gang shootings, drive-bys, and law enforcement just pulling you over for whatever reason. And I had a nice four-wheel drive truck at the time that I had worked for and earned and paid for. And I got pulled over many a times and asked, how did I get this truck? Where do I work? Where's your receipt? Just a whole bunch went along with the truck. And I just realized I had to get out of Southern California for my own peace of mind. End up putting in an application to Columbia, USC, Dillard, Morgan State, and Morehouse. And as all the put an application, and sent the application fees, and so as all the schools that were accepting me were being mailed back to the house. Back then it wasn't by email. Morehouse was the last one that came in, and I had literally sent first my money to Morgan State, and I was headed to Morgan State, and then Columbia came in, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go ahead to Columbia. But then when Morehouse came in and it was about Atlanta, I said, oh, I'm going to Morehouse. So end up going to Morehouse. Came close to wanting to come home because right around homecoming '92, all I wanted to do was work out, study, go to class, and I couldn't even do that because it was just so much. And those of us that have gone to HBCUs understand how sometimes the administration stuff and finances and just the everyday trying to go to class and study, sometimes things just don't line up. And I called my mom and said, hey mom, I'm coming home. I can't do it anymore. And she said, nah, stick it out, baby. Stick it out. Hang in there. So luckily, a good friend of mine who is now Dr. Owen McFarland, he was dating a young lady named Ray. Ray had a sister named Rena. And Owen said, hey, Glenn, I'm dating Ray. She got a sister named Rena. Why don't you come hang out with us and keep Rena busy while I can spend time with Ray? And I said, cool, why not? So after that homecoming, I met Rena. We all went out, and to this day, me and Rena has been married 25 years. We're going on 26 years. I have 2 kids. My son Mason, he just turned 25. He's at the University of Oregon finishing up. And my daughter Micah, she's 23, and she just graduated from Arizona State. So that's another story. So I ended up going to Morehouse, getting a degree in economics. Also got my MBA, and I also went to Emory and got my Six Sigma Lean Green Belt. Was in corporate America for about 14, 15 years, which was a combination of mortgage banking and supply chain. Was going up the corporate ladder, but had young kids and realized having a son that I needed to be in my son's life as much as possible. Left a lot of money on the table, a lot of money on the table because I walked away from it. Ended up being a customer service manager on a graveyard shift so I can be with the kids in the day because my wife was working in finance and banking. And in the daytime, she worked. I had the kids. Graveyard, I did Walmart for a couple of years. Once my folks retired and moved here, my kids were getting ready to go to school. I then can transition into working in the day, and they were at an age where I got my kids on the bus from about middle school until my son started driving. And I got into supply chain and got 49 DOT CFR hazard certified to ship hazards, and I did that for about 9 years. And as I was doing that, I was just watching the landscape of the world and just observing what was going on. And luckily, the traditional way I was raised was always the what can I say, the standard that kept me on the straight and narrow. I had my bumps and bruises with the wild side, but I was smart enough and always in tune with that little voice in the head that told me to say no, and going down this path would get me in trouble. Along the way in my life from 21 I say to about 55, I've come in contact with many men, many young ladies, many women, many men, many women, many young folks, and I've always tried to give the game. I've always tried to give the game, give what knowledge I know, what life experiences I've had, and basically just been mentoring and coaching informally. And so, always been a part of fitness since Jack LaLanne, working out and really training for baseball and football. Hung out with a lot of bodybuilders back in the day. I used to go hang up at Venice Beach, go hang out with my uncle. Back in the day, saw Craig Munson and everybody hanging out at Venice Beach. And my uncle used to work out with some of those guys up there at the beach, and really into weightlifting and training. Most of the guys I grew up with, we were really into weightlifting, and we still are. Even at 55, 57, 59, 60, all of us still work out. All of us still work out. All of us still take care of ourselves. And we see the difference in our friends and family who didn't take heed to that working out. However, there was a 7-year window when I was in corporate America when I got out of shape. And I consider that a blessing, because as a coach, trainer, mentor, and someone who's really into health and wellness and fitness, I understand what it is to get out of shape and get off track. But I do know you can get back on track. So that was that. So over the years, I have coached, trained, managed, and just been around a lot of young folks. And I try to give what we call game, but just try to give good advice. And I watch all that has taken place with the pandemic and everything in the last 2-3 years, and everything that has taken place on YouTube and content creation and creating content, and what all of this is, and really just watching what is happening with black male and female relationships, and it's really just what's happening with black men. And I'm a realist, and I'm optimistic, because what I can say, when I was 8 years old, my parents had bought the Encyclopedia Britannica. They used to sell them door to door, and I had read A to Z. I had read A to Z by the time I was 10 years old, and I had all the books, and we had the Time Life books as well of the Life series. And really, two things stick out as a book reader and reading a lot of things very young. It was Charles Darwin, understanding the theory of evolution and adaptation, and when you don't adapt or evolve, you become extinct. There's Abraham Maslow and the hierarchy of needs, and that pyramid of your basic needs at the bottom, and at the top, self-actualization, and everything in between. And then studying, Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, Fannie Lou Hamer, Medgar Evers, the Civil Rights Movement, knowing about Jim Crow, what has taken place in the United States over 400 years with slavery and racism and reparations and sundown laws, the Kerner Commission report, COINTELPRO, Black Panther movement, the Nation of Islam, Minister Louis Farrakhan, Khalid Muhammad, how hip-hop has become a staple and a mainstay in American culture and society. I love hip-hop. I see where even back then, Tupac had his run-in with, with a lot of pastors and preachers and some forward-thinking folks who, what I consider, which has always been a clash, is the Booker T. Washington group versus the W.E.B. Du Bois group, the bourgeoisie versus the working class or the worker. That's always been kind of a clash. Understanding that hip-hop and individuals who are involved in hip-hop, they had to learn it somewhere. They had to get the information somewhere. They had to take something from somewhere and do something with it, good or bad. One of the certifications and one of the things I picked up along the way that just really gave me a better perspective on history, quality, perfection, probability, the probability of success, and the probability of a failure is my Six Sigma Lean Green Belt. Though it's used for business to understand if you're getting this result and it's not perfect, to go back through the manufacturing process and look at where the mistakes are, look at where the errors are, and all these different formulas and programs and analysis you can do to figure out why are things not perfect and why are things not going wrong. And looking at the diaspora, the black community, what's going on with black men, and just what's going on with the world in general. You have this result that's not right, and you get individuals who point fingers without looking at the whole timeline and the historical process and the variables that influence what makes something successful and what makes something a failure. And I've applied that to my life, and I wish I applied it a lot more, which I'm doing now, because you're dealing with the day-to-day things you need to deal with. But once you take a step back, which I don't watch TV anymore, once you take a step back and start applying core values, quality control, time management, due diligence, being intuitive and being intentional, especially with time, because you don't get time back, you realize that you have to be accountable, and the things that affect you and your life that you can control, when you maintain a standard, tomorrow is promised to you, and you're putting things in place so that when the tomorrow do come, you're ready for it. So two things that's always been said, and I always say, whoever come up with a quote or have some saying or some theory, who said it? And I want to know what their background is. It said that the sky is the limit. No, the sky is not the limit. Number two, tomorrow is not promised to you. I think that's a lie. Tomorrow is not promised to you, and I think that's been part of the problem with African American men. We've been the target for so long. In general, we don't think about tomorrow. We think about that moment. And I was like that. And here I am getting ready to turn 60. And my wife reminded me of something I used to say when I was in my 20s. You know, every new year, man, I'm glad I made it through this year. Man, I'm glad I made it through this year. And it really bothered her. And I didn't realize how much that bothered her. And here I am about to turn 60. And what it made me realize is you have to do things in place and be proactive about your life, be intentional. Health, wealth, gain, knowledge, grace, gratitude, and when tomorrow comes, whatever tomorrow brings, you're ready for it. So we're going to start it off with that one. We're going to start this off with that one. And I promise, every Friday, depending on how I end up the schedule, but every Friday or every Monday, I'm going to come. This used to be my son's bedroom. I've turned it into my office. But let's say every Monday, I'm going to come here. I'm going to sit. I'm going to turn this camera on. And I'm just going to give you what I have in my brain. Real talk. Again, my name is Glendy Andrews. I got an apparel store called Heroes and Kings, and it's Heroes and Kings, and that Kings is with a Z. You can go to heroesandkings.com or heroesandkings.world. I also got a podcast on Spotify, which for the last 2 or 3 years, I just within 15, 20 minutes, just whatever I'm thinking about, whatever I see going on in the world, just give my opinion. I have a right to my opinion. I have that. So that podcast is Heroes and Kings. So Amazon, iTunes, Spotify, Anchor FM. And also, if you are interested in online training, as well as one-on-one training. I still do one-on-one training. I sent several guys to Major League Baseball last year. So I've been working with pros as well as what I call civilians for over 20 years now. Professional athletes, football, NFL, NCAA, high school, Major League Baseball. I work with a few soccer players. I work with some folks who ran cross country, a few MMA folks, some law enforcement, as well as some guys in the military trying to get through PT. So I have a really diverse background. Also, if you do a search on Google, Glenn D. Andrews, Amazon.com, I am an author. I have published over 13 books. English was always a challenge for me. So my challenge was, let me just write some books. My challenge was English. So I said, let me write some books. So I got several titles on Amazon.com. So this is number one. I've put some other information on from Heroes and Kings and other videos and me just talking, and what I promised to do, what I'm committed to do. And I'm looking at my clock and I'm looking at what time and what day it is. You know, I've had several young brothers say, hey Glenn, start putting your stuff on YouTube, put more of you on YouTube. And what I will hold myself to, and what you, my brothers out there, and sisters as well, and anybody outside the community. And I think David Banner said this. The big thing with having an opinion and having criticism is that your contribution to the community, to the world, to your family, to people, your contribution should always outweigh your criticism. Critiquing, criticizing, having an opinion about something that you don't feel is right, you have your right to do it, but you also have to have a contribution that outweighs that. So I just want to leave you with that. So my name is Glenn D. Andrews. I'm Heroes and Kings. This is number one, starting 2023. Grace, muscle, fitness, knowledge, game, money, and gratitude. Out.